Hey, do you need to kickstart your business but have too much debt holding you back? Are you behind on your payments to creditors like vendors, merchant cash advances, even American Express? Look, now's not the time for panic. It's time for a plan. Look, if you stay to the end, I'm going to show you how to get creditors off your back so you could explode your sales. Negotiate your debt for pennies on the dollar, how to avoid getting sued, and avoid getting ripped off by those debt settlement companies. Look, we all know that being an entrepreneur is a lonely job, right? We're coming out of this national shutdown. Most of us has had very little income over the last few months. And when, it hits the fan, it can be really overwhelming, right? But I really mean it when I tell you now is not the time for panic, right? We need to put a plan together, right? So first, let me tell you a little bit about us. We're American Express Settlements, right? We help businesses that are struggling to grow because of too much debt really explode their sales, right? Actually, most of us have had businesses of our own and have faced the same struggles that you have. And we know what it takes to not only survive, but to thrive, right? So you should know that 8 years ago, I made every mistake possible in my business, and I paid for it dearly, starting with too much debt, too much reliance on one customer, losing that customer, and then putting my head in the sand, ignoring creditors, letting things escalate into lawsuits and judgments. And finally, after all that inaction, I lost my business. It was preventable. And I still carry around a lot of guilt for failing, not for me, but my employees, my wife. My kids were small, so they never knew, but all the people that I did business with. Look, I'll get into more details later on, but for now, know that I wish I knew then what I knew now. As of today, I've been with American Express Settlements for 3 years, and over that time, we've helped hundreds of business owners avoid what I went through, giving them peace of mind, helping them focus on kickstarting their sales, working together to make the light at the end of that tunnel a lot brighter. My goal today is to pass on knowledge. After that, most of us will struggle with lack of implementation. In other words, you might know what to do, but rolling up your sleeve and executing on these ideas is totally different, right? Always know that I and my team can get you to thrive in this new economy the way I've done for hundreds of businesses just like you. I'm going to give you a couple of success stories to prove my point, right? First, there was Bruce, smart guy in his early 30s. He sells a special ink, right? He generates leads and sells that ink to hundreds of dealers across the country. He's one of those, internet whizzes. The guy had a really good thing going for a while. Don't get me wrong, he painstakingly built this business, right? Took him years traveling all over the country. But now his employees think he's just relaxing by the pool, just collecting the money that, they're earning for him, right? So let's take these 3 winners in his office, right? They think it's easy, so they hatch a plan to redirect all of his traffic to websites that they set up, right? And then sell those leads to a few crooked dealers. And then by the time they got caught, they stole $500,000 from this guy, right? Charged everything to his American Express bill and decimated years of hard work, leaving this poor guy with about $286,000 in debt, right? Guy totally fell apart, right? He had a lot of trouble dealing with everything he worked for that was ripped away overnight. So when we met this guy, American Express filed their first lawsuit. I said first because they took this guy to the cleaners, right? I felt so bad for this guy. He had a limited budget with us, $4,000 a month, so I knew we had to drag it out. First, we dealt with the lawsuit in Arizona, and then, like I said, adding insult to injury, American Express filed another lawsuit in New York against him, right? I had to talk this guy off a cliff more times than I care to remember. We fought both lawsuits. We worked with his attorney and his accountant, and then after 10 months of fighting, we settled with American Express for $80,000 spread out, interest-free over 2 years, right? In the end, we saved the guy $206,000. But here's the real success. This guy is back on top, doing better than ever, and American Express is going to issue him a new card once he pays off the settlement. What I like about him was that, he was willing to trust us after getting royally screwed. And don't get me wrong, we saved him a bunch of money. I pat myself on the back all the time, but what he made in his business during this time on his own was 10 times that. Next guy was a California construction company, right? This guy was Armenian, really strong personality. You know, some might think this guy's a jerk, right? He's used to doing business with a handshake. Well, he learned the hard way that you need to go over these contracts with a fine-tooth comb. So he had 4 jobs go bad. He ended up losing over $800,000 in expected profit. So when we got there, he was getting sued by 2 suppliers. One was going after his commercial bond. And he had judgments with American Express, which were over a year old. They put liens on his house. So here's the strategy, right? He needed to fund all the work that he had, right? His credit was shot. He couldn't borrow against his house because of the liens. He did have a commercial building that he could refinance, but they wanted the house, but they wanted the liens off his house paid off, and they wanted his bond cleaned up. And doing all that would have left him with not enough money to fund the jobs, right? So what we ended up doing took over 6 months. We put him on a decent budget, right? We settled with his 2 suppliers first for about 50 cents on the dollar, spread out over a year. Then we went after American Express. They agreed to settle for a significant discount, 75 cents off. We ended up settling for 25 cents on the dollar, but they wanted a lump sum. So we got them to agree to wait till after closing. Now, in the end, we were able to get everything done. He refinanced the building. We paid off American Express. We played nice with his bonding company. He was now had the money to finance all of his jobs. He had a commercial bond, which in that space, you can't do these big jobs without that commercial bond, right? And look, we saved this guy again, $200,000, but the real success here is action. This guy took massive action. He got out of his comfort zone. He swallowed his pride and gave us control. And in the end, all that additional work that he took on over the next 18 months netted him over $1 million, right? So two lessons here: massive action. Number 2 is the funding, the fat from his jobs paid for that debt. And again, yes, we saved him money, but he took control. He did the hard work, and we helped him get there. Next guy this is a little bit of a sad story. This is a Florida medical spa. Starts out with a doctor, ER doctor, working 80 to 100 hours a week, killing himself in the emergency room, right? Made good money, not bad, but literally gave up his whole life doing it, right? He sells everything that he has, sells his house, his savings, opens up a medical spa, and does very well for a decent amount of time. I think it was 5 years he was doing fantastic, right? Then hurricanes hit South Florida, shut his business down for months, right? He had no income. He got behind on everything. He was behind on the rent, payroll taxes, all of his equipment leasing. I think he was originally paying like $10,000 a month in equipment leasing alone, right? Became a client of ours after one of the finance companies filed a $170,000 lawsuit out of state against his company and him personally. The collateral was a specialized laser machine. Original cost was about $210,000. Again, he tried to reach out himself, but look, this is a finance company, billion-dollar finance company, number 1. Number 2, he's a doctor. They think this guy's making money hand over fist, living the good life. Most of our creditors have zero collateral with the creditor, right? They think the money that they're owed is hid under our client's mattress, right? So here was our strategy, right? We hired a local attorney in Nevada. We answered the lawsuit, and then we reach out to the creditor's attorney. And this was a very business-like transaction, no emotion. This was what we laid out. Number 1, the machine original cost was $210,000. But we found estimates of a used machine very similar to his for $30,000 to $40,000, right? We presented that to the creditor, and then we also showed the guy's financials. He didn't have a house anymore. He leased his car, so there was no assets that they can go after personally. We ended up settling this lawsuit or this debt for $60,000, lowering his payment from $5,000 a month to $2,000 a month, spreading it out interest-free over 3 years, right? Since then, again, it didn't start there. We adjusted his payment up and down a bunch of times, right? And look, we act as a buffer between the creditor and our clients. We're in this for a long term, which is actually an important part, right? One thing that helps us get these settlements is that we make all these payments to the creditor so that the creditors don't have to worry about balance payments, right? These law offices are not set up to chase these payments, for 3 years. So that gives us a little leverage when negotiating with these law firms. Right. Next was a Texas fence company. This is a very common story, right? The guy that owned the company was your typical old school hard worker, right? He was a master craftsman, always out in the field, loves what he did. He has an office manager that worked for him for years. When she retired, his daughter took over the office, and she ended up finding the paperwork of this lawsuit hidden in the drawer. She hired us after she reached out to the attorney and realized this guy had a judgment out of state in Alabama for over a year. So what we did was the attorney, it seems that the attorney was chasing her father down for over a year, never could get the guy on the phone, so that when she reached out to him, they wanted their $20,000 judgment paid immediately, right? Obviously, they didn't have it. They had a budget of around $1,000 a month. And this one was, unlike the medical spa, this one was totally personal, right? This attorney was pounding his chest, billion-dollar company behind him. He was, think about it. These attorneys want to get more business from their clients. So he tries to be real, hard-nosed. We ended up, this one took us 6 months. We had a $1,000 budget. We ended up settling this debt for $10,000 from the original $20,000. We gave them a $4,000 down payment, which came out of the escrow account. And then we lowered the payment to $500 to pay off the balance, right? Now, you could imagine having to deal with this back and forth for 6 months as a business owner, right? This is, look, this is not a lot of money. But last I spoke to him, the daughter has cleaned everything up, got his books in order. The dad, I don't even think the dad knew all the mess that the daughter cleaned up, right? This was a good one. Here's a guy, Triple J Produce. He's one of these guys that got in trouble with not only merchant cash advances, but then he got robbed from one of those Florida debt settlement companies. So there's a lesson here. I don't know who's worse, those merchant cash advance companies with those ridiculous interest rates, or these debt settlement companies that just straight up rob you. Here's the game they play. And this is to be very clear, it's not all of them, but you do want to read your contracts before you pay these guys a dime, right? These guys buy lists of businesses that have taken these merchant cash advances. Their pitch is, your name came across my desk as somebody that is having trouble paying your merchant cash advance. Is that you? Am I correct? Well, that's kind of like a water salesman asking you if you like clean water, right? Of course you're having trouble paying these merchant cash advances. They got daily payments. They got ridiculous interest rates. This guy was no different, right? And he had 8 merchant cash advances. He was paying $5,000 a day. That's $100,000 a month, right? Of course he's having trouble paying it, right? So they tell him, stop paying the merchant cash advance. Start paying us $6,500 a week. This was a blessing to this guy. Right now, he's under the impression that they consolidated all these merchant cash advances. He's making one $6,500 payment. They went back and paid all their cash advances. Totally not the case, right? Here's where it gets interesting, right? What they have in their contract is their fee is usually 25% of the debt. They need to get their fee up front before they have to do anything, so they don't do anything. This guy pays the debt settlement company. The merchant cash advances, again, they're the ones that gave money, right? They took a risk on this guy, even though it was a high interest. They gave the money. They're not getting anything. They're getting ghosted by the debt settlement company. They're getting ghosted by our client. So this is like stirring up a hornet's nest, right? They start calling their vendors. I'm talking about the merchant cash advances. They start calling up the guy's vendors. They freeze his bank accounts. They file their UCCs, and they file lawsuits, right? By the way, this guy also gets sued by one of his suppliers because the merchant cash advances drained all the money to pay one of his suppliers. And at this point, the supplier hates this guy, right? Now, here's where these things get personal, right? Our client doesn't know who to trust, right? We asked to start with one debt, the supplier. We got a local attorney. We settled it right away. Now, he owes them $54,000. This was a battle that took about 30 days to get this thing settled. We don't get it settled for as low as I would like, but we settled it for $40,000. But the plus was we got it spread out over 3 years so it doesn't hurt his cash flow, right? Then the guy gave us 2 little merchant cash advances, right? We settled $24,000 and $13,000. We settled it for $9,000 and $5,000, saving the guy over $20,000. But again, we spread the payment out over a year, right? That's our goal, is to throw as much cash back into the business, right? And then what happened was now our client knows that we're somebody that could get something done. We're not going to screw the guy. We proved that we were able to get results and get results quick. We end up prying the rest of the business from that Florida debt settlement company, and that is after the debt settlement company stole, and I say stole, lightly, but they stole $35,000 in fees. They didn't do anything. They won't give the guy back his money. Well, okay, here's another guy. Illinois Commercial Development Company. They buy distressed commercial properties, right? They fix them up, they refinance them. Simple business model when it works, but there's always hiccups, right? So they would have so they have a property that's starting to have trouble, and they're forced again to take these merchant cash advances. And let's be honest, these merchant cash advances took the risk with this client. They gave them the money. This is not a get out of jail free card. I want to stress that. They gave him the money. They took the risk. He ends up not being able to pay their terms. This guy, gets his income on a monthly basis. These merchant cash advances ask for a daily payment. These merchant cash advances ask for a daily payment, and he eventually defaults. They freeze his account. So here's another lesson here. They freeze his account because he signed a COJ. If you don't know what a COJ is, it's a confession of judgment. It allows a creditor to bypass the judicial process and the lawsuit part of it and immediately get a judgment, freezes his bank account for $170,000, right? And they messed up. The bank froze other accounts that were not listed on the judgment. So here, different strategy. We countersued the bank and the merchant cash advance company because they froze other accounts. And then that forced their hand. We settled with this merchant cash advance company for $70,000 from $170,000, spread the payments out over 14 months. Big difference here, going from $20,000 a month to $5,000 a month, from $170,000 to $70,000. Okay, so here's the success story. Saving the money is only a part of the issue. What the real issue for this guy was unfreezing accounts, clearing the judgment, getting the property renovated, and refinanced with traditional financing, and putting it into his portfolio. So here the guy's financing ended up going from $5,000 a month down to $1,000 a month on a traditional financing for the property. So this last one, and I can go on and on with examples like this, but this is one of my favorite. This is Trevor. He makes industrial kitchen equipment, third generation company. It was at one point a $30 million a year business, right? Guy goes through a divorce, made a big payment to his ex-wife, and by his own admission, took his eye off the ball, and a bunch of jobs went bad, right? Now, these are multiple seven-figure jobs, so a mistake is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Going back 2017, I was seeing a lot of lawsuits going against this guy. Most of them were personal. I reach out to this guy, nice guy, extremely humble. He opens up to me. He admits, he took ownership. What I liked about this guy was he took ownership for the mistakes he made, and he told me that he's going to have to live with these mistakes for the rest of his life. Does that sound familiar? Like, this was my story, right? I felt terrible for this guy But unlike mine, this guy was a third generation business. This is a business that his grandfather started. Well, regarding the lawsuits, his attorneys told him to go get a judgment, and they were going to declare bankruptcy and put a key in the door and end his family legacy, right? I wished him the best of luck. I gave him our solution. But then 6 months later, this guy calls me back and asks me, do I remember him? Of course I remember this guy, right? He now digs his way out. I believe his uncle lent him like $700,000 to get out of this business, which, look, I didn't have a rich uncle. Most people don't have a rich uncle. But here's where it takes a real good turn. Number one, he gets a lifeline from his uncle, gets the money, and now starts turning around the business. That funded some jobs, start getting some bigger jobs. And now his problem was the judgments from his past go back and freeze his account every time he gets money in his account. When he calls me, he was running payroll out of his dad's personal bank account. Now, here's a guy with 50 employees running payroll out of his personal bank account, right? Okay, so now to top it off, he doesn't have any money. It was all frozen. So I remember he put a couple of $1,000s on a PayPal account that allowed me to get an attorney to start addressing the lawsuits and judgments. And then 3 months later, we get a monthly budget. It was small, but it grew. Every month we were raising the budget. And in the end, 18 months later, we settled $800,000. I believe we saved him over $300,000, including our fees, right? So these were 7 or 8 creditors, mostly subcontractors and suppliers in all different states. But look, these were not all his debts. Some of the debts he dealt with himself. These were creditors and vendors that he dealt with for years. But there's a lesson here. One claim, this was the one in Idaho. We hired an attorney. Now look, we're out of New York. Our client's out of Texas. This case is in Idaho. It was for $135,000. The case dragged on for 6 months. Our legal bills were mounting, but keep in mind, our client's legal bills are capped at 10% of the debt. We're responsible for anything over that. So now I'm putting pressure on the attorney to get a settlement. He is getting nothing less than 100 cents on the dollar. I think the creditor also wanted us to pay a 12% interest for 2 years was the max that they would go out, right? So now I reach out to the attorney. I reach out to my client. He's like, screw it. Let's pay it. I'll figure it out, right? Again, I'm taking this personal because this is something that I went through myself, right? So I throw up a Hail Mary pass. I fire the attorney. I hire a new attorney that would allow me to negotiate it myself. The first attorney wouldn't even let me negotiate it ourselves. We end up settling the debt for $70,000 from $135,000, spread out over 3 years, interest-free. Now, here's the kicker. We find out that the original attorney went to school or was friends with the creditor attorney. They were looking just to take advantage of us, take advantage of our client, thinking that as long as everybody's out of town, nobody would be the wiser. They look like heroes to their creditor, and we'll just pay the fees, no harm, no foul. So, there was a lesson that if we didn't have a financial incentive to get this done, most likely they would have got away with it. Look, you have to remember why you got into business in the first place, right? Most people think it's money, right? It's not, it's freedom, right? So how's that saying go? We work 80 hours a week so we don't have to work 40, right? So let's go over strategy. See, you have 2 problems. First and foremost, it's growing the business. Right? That's what fuels this, right? My dad used to say that money solves most problems. He was right about most problems, right? Money is a byproduct of doing a great job. And this takes a lot of effort. Anything that distracts you from that is something you need to cut out, right? For me to bounce back, I circled the wagons. I had nothing to lose, right? I had to focus 100% on building something back, right? And this is not your last rodeo, right? It's not like you're going to go out and get a job, right? If you don't handle this, this is going to keep coming back, right? Bad credit, bad trade lines, and eventually you're going to need to borrow again, right? If you want to take your business to the next level, you're going to need credit, right? You're going to need your reputation back. right? And then there's the debt. Creditors want their money, right? Hey, look, they deserve it, right? This is not a get out of jail free card. And they, the money that they want it now, right? Vendors want to usually get paid in net 30 days. American Express wants to get paid in full every month. These cash advances want their money every day. Now, look, that's crazy. Their interest is front loaded, so you have to pay that first. And then, they get you to refinance, and then that's a debt spiral, right? You're paying interest upon interest, right? And then what about your exit, right? One thing that a lot of my clients forget about is eventually they're going to want to sell the business, right? Anyone that wants to buy this business, they want a good name, they want a brand, they want a reputation, right? Do you think they want to deal with your skeletons, right? A brand is a lot better to sell than a business, right? So you have three options, right? Number one, you could put the key in the door and walk away. That sucks. I did it. I still think about it, right? Number two, you could borrow your way out of it, right? You could borrow against your house. You borrow against your equipment, family, and here's the mistake that most people make. You're replacing unsecured debt with secure debt, right? That is not something I ever recommend, right? There's definitely a better way, right? You could pay it off on their terms, right? But look, they're not looking at the long-term viability of your company, right? They're looking to keep you alive long enough so that they could get paid, and then they really don't care what happens to you. And remember, we got into this for freedom, right? Not money, but when those creditors are chasing you, knocking on your door, where's the freedom on that? When they were knocking on my door every Saturday morning with a lawsuit, I think my wife still has PTSD from that, right? So now, look, you could also file bankruptcy. And I'm not an attorney, and I will never give anyone legal advice. But what I was told, look, if you could file Chapter 7, totally wipe the slate clean, that's one story. But filing Chapter 13 or Chapter 11 in a court-appointed negotiation, look, there's a 10% success rate on that, right? Why? Well, it's expensive. Chapter 11, there's tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes, six-figure legal fees to get that done, right? And more importantly, you're not in charge, right? A judge and your creditors are in charge, right? I had a client in New Jersey. He filed bankruptcy. Now listen, he had zero equity in his house. His creditors got the judge to force him to sell the house. There was no reason he had to sell the house, right? He had to move into a rental. I think his rental fees was more than his mortgage. But the thing was, this got personal. They hated this guy. They got the judge to agree to something ridiculous. And now look, who pays? He pays? No. His wife pays. His kids pay, right? Who wins in that? So here's what we're proposing. We're an alternative to all this. We're an alternative to bankruptcy. We're an alternative to borrowing your way out of it, walking away, right? We give you back control. So look, here's what we do. Number one is you need to protect your assets, like bank accounts. Look, because that's what your creditors are going to go after first. Again, I want to make this very clear. This is not a get out of jail free card, right? We're not hiding assets. This is nothing like that. You are protecting them until you can get this behind you. Number two is you're buying yourself time, right? Your creditors want your money. They want their money now. And, we're looking for you to invest 5 to 10% of that every month, into getting this thing paid off, right? Number three is we need those calls to stop, right? So you could focus on the number one problem is kickstarting your business. And we have ways to help you to kickstart your business, right? But this could be done with a virtual assistant answering the calls. Number two is using an answering service to answer the calls. At American Express Settlements, we have a whole team that does that, right? So look, this is not easy, right? On top of everything you do, keep in mind that you have the hard job, right? You're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure that your trucks are on the road, materials got delivered to the job, that the morning shift came in. That's the tough job. Compared to that, this is a lot easier. But you're dealing with everything, and on top of this, you're adding to all your pressures, right? You're not going to get your business back to where it is having all this on your shoulders, right? So here's the secret. The cash flow that you put back into your business will easily get you where you need to be, right? If we get you to increase your sales, it's the fat of the profits of the new sales that are going to pay off this old debt, right? And if you could hand this off to someone that specializes in this, that pays for themselves by reducing what you owe, seems like a no-brainer, and all the while increasing your sales by 2x, 3x. Does that sound like a good idea? So who is this for? Or better yet, who do I want to go to war for, right? My best clients, number one, they want to pay it back, right? Again, I keep beating a dead horse, but this is not a get-out-of-jail-free card, right? My best clients want to pay this back, want to kickstart their sales. They want to be the big dog in their industry, right? They have a lot to get there. Number one, they want to get rid of their debt. Number two, they want to put the systems in place to generate the sales to be that top dog and build a first-class operation. And then C, eventually exit with a big payday, right? So again, if you want to use this money that I'm going to save you to go to Disney World, this is not for you. If you have the money sitting in your bank account and, but you just don't want to pay it because your vendor pissed you off, again, this is not for you. Don't get me wrong, I have a few clients like that. They told me everything I needed to hear to take them on, but when the rubber met the road and during the discovery phase, the judge and lawyers demanded to see this guy's bank accounts to prove what we were saying, and there it was. We looked like fools. The credit, my client looked like a thief, and then he ended up having to pay us, having to pay the attorney, and having to pay his creditor in full, right? We want the entrepreneur that needs a break, right? We want the entrepreneur that needs to explode their sales, right? We need the entrepreneur that is able to invest a portion of what he owes every month and pour the rest into his business to take it to the next level. So this is how we do this. First, we establish a sustainable monthly budget. Then we hire one of our 500 local attorneys. They protect you from lawsuits, judgments, those COJs that we talked about. Then we build an extensive financial profile, proving to your creditors and your vendors, our argument that you want to pay, you just don't have the ability to pay it in full now. Then we reach out to your creditors immediately. There's no ghosting anyone. And we start on this process right away to get this behind you, right? So we get it done in one of three ways. So number one is a lump sum payment. We get it settled for a big discount and everybody heads down the road. And then second, when we're dealing with a creditor that wants to get paid in full, we put a payment plan together, again, within your sustainable monthly budget, spread out over a long period of time, right? And then third, and this is about 70% of our settlements, we get a significant discount, and then we put up a small down payment, and then we put the rest into a payment plan, usually between 12 and 18 months. And that's why the budget and the reserve account is so important. First, we use it to build up the war chest, and it's also protected, from your creditors. And second, like what happened to me, look, when I tried negotiating with Chase, asking for a reduction and a payment plan, they were like, Ralph, you had a payment plan and you didn't pay it. That was your regular monthly payment. So we use the reserve payment history to show your creditors that, yes, you can make a payment, and then you've been doing it for 3 to 5 months. And if not, we'll chase down the payments every month. So your next question is, how do we get paid? Well, that's the best part. 95% of the time, it's your creditors that pay our fees, right? Let me explain without sounding cheesy, right? There's two parts of it. Number one is 10% of the debt is earmarked for legal fees. And 60% of the time, we spend more than that. Because the longer we can go, we build up more in the reserve account, and the savings for our clients are bigger, right? And then our clients are only capped at 10% of the legal fees. So the money goes to the attorney, and we don't make any money on that. Like I said, most of the time, we lose money on that. right? So then how we earn our fee is a percentage of what we save you. Our interests are aligned. If we can't add any value, save you money, we don't get paid. I know what you're thinking. You wish all your employees get paid like that. And you should know our clients save about 30% of what they owe, meaning we reduce their debt by 30%, and that's including our fees, that's including any legal fees, right? But like I showed you, the money you save is nothing compared to what you will make growing your business, right? The debt will be paid off by the profits of your growth. So that's what makes this work, right? First, you have to kickstart your business. And this is a three-legged stool. It's going to take work on three parties all working together. You, us, and your creditor. Any one of us doesn't play ball, and this is not going to succeed, right? We have to get you back to doing business at the level you need to, right? Because if you fail, we all fail with you. Remember, you're meant for more, right? We're just a catalyst for you. So when can I help? You should know we deal with the original creditor. We'll deal with collection agencies, attorneys, lawsuits, and judgments. But know that the sooner in the process, the better the results. And that makes sense, right? If we're dealing with the original creditor, they didn't have to hire an outside company. They didn't have to deal with legal fees. And it most likely didn't get personal yet, right? You think your vendor never dealt with money problems, right? Probably a lot more than a $500 an hour attorney, right? The sooner you take action, the better off you'll be. For me, it's the same, right? But for you, it's going to make the world a difference. Plus, the faster we deal with this, the faster you could start rebuilding. Remember, the money is not in what we save you. The money is in how you grow your business. So I like to say that we're going to guarantee results, meaning we don't get paid unless we save you money. So you're going to have to apply. Fill out an application on this page. We'll call you right away, and then we can get you on the phone with me or one of my senior consultants to answer any final questions and get you on your way back to where you belong. I'm looking forward to talking to you.